Hey everyone, my name is Neil and this is Real Terrain Hobbies, and this is the final video to a huge undertaking, a massive gaming table or display table, however you want to look at it, from Tabletop World. A massive board using all these Tabletop World buildings. If you're new to the channel, that's what's happening here, and that's what this video is all about. There's a whole entire playlist of our epic journey getting to where we are right now. We had to get all these buildings shipped in all the way from Croatia, get them painted up. I needed some help from another YouTuber named Brent from Goobertown Hobbies. He came all the way up from the States. I'm in Canada to help me with this thing. And it's been a huge journey ever since we got those painted up. And now we're finally in the final stages of getting this project completely wrapped up. So this is the video that brings it all together. As you saw, we built this crazy huge base using a ton of styrofoam and some rock molds and plaster and sculpting mold. Then we put some grout, some flocking, vegetation. If you saw the last video, you can see we used some amazing elements from Diorama Precipice to make this look absolutely incredible. Now we're building the city up on the hill overlooking this beautiful lush valley below. And man, this is the part I'm most excited for. The city up on the hill using all these incredible buildings. Before we get into it, I just got to give a big shout out to my good friend Emil from Squidmar Miniatures. He's just launched his very first Kickstarter and he's developed an incredible set of paintbrushes. He's got a set here that he sent me, and these things are absolutely stunning. These are his dream brushes that he's developed and they are absolutely incredible. I never really had a good set of brushes before, and just having a proper, really nice set makes a huge difference in painting your minis. And not only that, you can see here, this is him painting this bust. He's developed 5 of these things with a team of artists, and you can pick up all these in his Kickstarter, which are absolutely stunning. This is the case that your brushes come in. As you can see, the artwork is phenomenal. Clearly, he's poured his heart and soul into this project, and I'd highly recommend check out his Kickstarter and grab a set of these amazing, beautiful brushes. Alright, so the most prominent feature of this castle city section is obviously going to be the outer wall. And to really make this special and sort of stand out, I wanted to make it tiered. That is, not completely flat, but have some layers and some depth to it. Doing this is just going to add so much extra character and volume and dimension to the castle itself. And you'll see here we do something special with the buildings too. So I want to throw in some retaining walls and stairs and a whole bunch of stuff in here to have this as a multi-layered city. I think that's going to add a ton of detail and character into this, and you get to see the rooftops above the wall. I'm not quite sure exactly how I want to do this. What I am going to be using, and I had a poll for this in the YouTube community before, and you guys voted to use this stuff. This is called Epoxy Sculpt. So I'm going to be using that. This is something entirely new. I haven't used it before. And I'm going to start with this wall section here. I've been wondering how I'm going to be doing this exactly, and I decided to use some foam core. This is the Elmer's foam core. I got a pack of this here. I'm just going to apply the epoxy sculpt right onto this as opposed to the styrofoam. So we'll see what we can do here with this stuff, see how well it takes texture. I've never worked with it before. We'll see what happens. Alright, so for this project and these walls, we're going to be using Epoxy Sculpt. This is a sculpting clay that is just like an epoxy in itself. It's 2-part that you mix together and it hardens just like a plastic. It's great for this. It takes details super well and is really good, especially if you're doing something a little bit more modular, which I plan to do in the future. All right, so with this stuff, you need a solvent to use on your tools. I knew this, but I was going to try it first without. This was a major mistake. As you saw, you need to use this stuff. Spread it over either your clay first, your tools. I did both. And I got the cheap brand here. This is the Winsor & Newton. There is the same brand as the Epoxy Sculpt. They have their own, but it is way more expensive. I just got the Winsor & Newton. Works just as well. And so yeah, I'm just adding in the extra details into this. I used a rock for texturing to put that rock texture onto the stonework itself, and that worked really well. And again, all I'm doing is building my base structure out of the foam core and putting on the epoxy sculpt on top of that. It adheres super well. It basically adheres to anything. You can even use this as a glue for certain things, and it works really well. So here, for example, I'm using the epoxy sculpt just to glue these two pieces together. This is going to bond as if it is one solid piece. I'm just using the hot glue on the back because it dries quick, and this stuff takes 24 hours to cure. And you just carve in your rocks to match up, and it's as if it was one solid sculpt. Okay, so I'm just planning out where exactly I'm going to put these final wall pieces. I've got the big section right here done. It is just finished curing right now. I just got to paint that up basically. And I'm semi planning out where I want my other walls. We got this ramp coming up here that's going to be the main road. And we're going to have to carve out some more styrofoam for that and put in some various retaining walls, like maybe one on this corner here, another one up here and over here. So let's just come in, take a closer look, and we'll see exactly how we're going to do this. I'll cut out some styrofoam, and then we'll make the individual pieces with the epoxy or epoxy clay and finalize that and get it all put together here. All right, so we're moving on to the painting of these things. Now it's got a consistency exactly the same of the resin on the Tabletop World buildings. So I'm using the exact same technique there. And if you haven't seen how we did that, Brent from Goobertown Hobbies came over and helped me out with that, using the Vallejo pigments for the grout in between the stone, and then the same texturing methods for the stone itself. All right, so we are pretty much done with the epoxy sculpt. I got a couple pieces left there to do, but for the most part, done. And I got a really good idea of how this stuff works, what I kind of like and don't like about it. Number one thing is that it's expensive. Like this little 4-pound pack here, 2 pounds each, $100, that's expensive. So one thing I regret is I did not make these pieces modular. At least this piece is not the most modular thing in the world. It's got this weird slope and everything like that. I wish I would have thought it through a little bit better at the beginning to try to make things a little more modular so we could take these pieces apart. That's kind of the biggest benefit to using this stuff, is it's a lot like resin, very durable. But other than that, it's awesome stuff. It doesn't take paint like the Das clay does that I used on the Wizard Tower. That stuff soaks the paint in. This stuff sits on the surface much like the Tabletop World buildings themselves. So it fits in really nice and I'm really happy with it. But let's take a closer look and we can see exactly what we've got going on here. Okay, so like magic, our glue has dried. It's the next day already. You can see we got some sunlight coming in through my window there now. So we're going to move on to the plaster stage. And what I'm going to be doing is making my own sculpt mold. And then also using our roller that I made previously to make some cobblestone on here. So I'm going to make the plaster, or the sculpt mold, using plaster of Paris and the celluclay stuff I got from Michael's, which I thought was sculpt mold. It's not. It's actually a paper mache, which when it dries, it shrinks, and it takes 24 hours. It takes forever to dry. So yeah, let's get at her. I did make a test piece here. It worked out really well, and I think it's gonna look really good on here. All right, so this is about where we are at with our consistency. It's tough. You can still smooth things out. It's been about 20, maybe even 20, well, 15 to 25, we'll say, somewhere in there. I kind of lost track of time. So we're ready here. So I'm just gonna wet my roller with some water, dip it in there quickly. This has been covered in varnish, so it's not gonna absorb any of the water and reactivate the clay. Let's see what happens. Yeah, and that looks pretty good, so I'm going to continue on here. What I'm going to do on the inside here, we'll do this one right now as well, and you'll notice that it doesn't get all the way to the edge. I hit the wall right there, and that's where a rock stopped. That's totally fine. This little bit here, this is where the dust and the dirt is going to be collecting anyway. Yep, so I'm going to continue on with this. This looks really good already. I'm loving it, and I think this is going to be a really nice look. All right, so we're about getting ready to paint here, and I've decided last minute, and this is a step I probably should have figured out to do beforehand, before putting on the cobblestone, but I got these little lights, these guys right here. So these are some street lamps. I was debating whether or not to use these. I picked these up a while back. So they're little lamps. I was just gonna, pretend that they got a candle flame inside. They're not electrical. They're a warm white, so kind of an orangish light, sort of like candlelight. And I really should have put these in before doing the plaster, but I think we can still make it work. I'll just use a knife to etch out a little trough for the wires to go in. And I'll put a few of these up here. I think some LED lighting will go a really long way. I think these are LEDs, I'm not too sure actually. But they're little 3-volt little lamps. Let's get some lights in here. And I'm really excited to see how this is gonna turn out once these things are all lit up. Okay, so I've got almost all my lights in place. I'm just gonna put one more down over here, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in up here. And the wires, the little troughs cut in for the wires to hide in. I'm gonna be filling that in with some plaster. Before we do that though, one important thing is to test your lights. I don't wanna put any duds in here. So what I'm gonna be using to power these, they're 3-volt lights. So I've got 2 AA batteries, which are 1.5 volts each. If you connect the 2 in series, that's by putting them back to back. That is going to add up in voltage, and these will turn it into 3 volts. 1 plus 1 or 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3. So we're going to do this. I'm going to test these 2 first. These 2 are connected already. Okay, so put the negative on the one side, positive on the other. Got the 2 here, touch the batteries together. we have light. If you can see that, yeah, 2 lights there. And then I'm gonna test each of these out just to be 100% sure. So that one works, awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna test the rest here. We'll fill in these little troughs with plaster, and then we'll get to painting up the cobblestone.
Okay, so for painting the cobblestone, I'm going to be sealing it off first with some Mod Podge. I have used just the straight paints, the diluted paints before, just the same way I did the stone. But I wanted to try a bit of a different method just for a different look. This would be a look more similar to what you actually see on the stone itself. So the paints aren't going to be absorbing into the plaster, but it's going to be on top. So first of all, to do this, you put the Mod Podge down, and then you put your primer down, and then I just take some natural sponge. This is a sea sponge from Michael's that I got there. Dab it into some paint, and you start blotching it on. Start with the white, and then from there we get into some other colors.
Okay, so for all the white sections here, where the plaster has kind of gotten up on the rocks, I'm just going to be using a wash, so a black wash and a burnt umber, probably mostly the black. Just Vallejo colors, added in with some water. I've got a little sponge here. I'm actually going to be putting a bit more, making this a pretty heavy wash. So quite a bit of paint, quite a bit of pigment in here. I'm just going to dab this along. Just like that, and then we'll add in the color from the grout all along there. Alright, so I'm just going to be working on some different areas here regarding pathways. We got a lot of grout down here, and it looks okay, but it's definitely plain. We're going to be putting some flocking and stuff in there too, but I think it needs a bit more. I am actually going to be using these little gravel pieces that I sifted out from actual concrete bags, the gray stuff that I was using for the gray mortar, the gray ground texture. So we got a whole bunch of this. So this is going to act, I'm going to make a paste with this using Mod Podge and put some little pathways and things up in here as a market area. I think this whole area would look really nice with this stuff in there as kind of a small cobblestone-y type area. And I think it's going to look really, really good. So we're just going to make it into a paste with Mod Podge, spread it out, and throw down some cobblestone. Man, so all we got left is a few little trees. I got a small little guy that's gonna go right here, a medium back there, and then over here, one big one to go in. We'll throw a few shrubs in here and there, some leafy tufts, grassy tufts, a few little accents just to dress things up. And then on the exterior of the wall, I'll throw in some shrubs and some vines and things like that. And then we are done. It's crazy. Let's get these final elements out of the way here, and then we'll do the big reveal and show this thing off in all its glory. Yeah, so we're gonna put this little guy just in front of the inn here. Give that a little shot. Put that in there like that. Just like that. Moving up over here with this tree. Seems like it's a little out of the way, but trust me, when you look at it from far back, it looks really good. Just like that. And finally, last tree of the board, right here. Perfect. Okay, so now the ivy, and I really feel like these are gonna set this kind of wall section, really put it all together. There it is. Beautiful. Big difference. So awesome.